Teachers of Reddit, what are your stories of, oh god, this child is a sociopath? I have a million stories of students who say borderline sociopathic stuff, but the worst thing I've ever heard to date was, I can't be trusted with knives. My mommy hides all knives in the house from me because I've tried to stab everything and everyone. I know if I stab an animal or a person too much they might die. This would mean I'd go to jail, and I don't think I could make it in jail. So I want to find a dead body and stab it over and over again. This way I know I won't get in too much trouble cause the person was already dead. Had a high school freshman who was a very boisterous kid and youthful for his age. One day he was being disruptive and acting up, so I asked him to step out of the room with me while my co-teacher continued the lesson. I calmly explained to him why I had taken him out, why his behavior was disruptive, and asked him to be more mindful in the future. He seemed attentive to me and to understand where I was coming from. Then, just as I was about to go back in with him, he says to me, "Okay, I'm gonna start crying so everyone thinks you yelled at me." I immediately put the brakes on. I asked him why he wanted to do that, why he felt it was okay to lie like that, and why he wanted to make me seem like a bad person, when I had been very polite and thought we had had a good interaction. He didn't have any good answers with me, but we had already spent enough time out of class. I got him to agree to go in quietly, and we went on with the lesson. Needless to say, it was a sign of things to come. He turned out to be a gossiping, backstabbing little social monster. The more mature kids learned to keep their distance from him, and he cultivated friendships with other kids who enjoyed his acting out and emulated it. We finished out the year on reasonable terms, but as he went on to other teachers with different classroom styles, his behavior worsened and derailed many classes. A 5-year-old kindergarten student started crying. He didn't want to go in the classroom. His mother told him he had to go anyways. The kid stopped crying, took off his belt, and started whipping his mother. As a teacher, it was the first time I was completely speechless. This one happened just the other day, and, obviously, I'm going to be anonymous about it to protect the child's identity. Let's call her a B. So, I'm driving a minibus of students home from a basketball practice when suddenly a bee starts screaming, "Did that have peanuts in it? I'm allergic to peanuts." She begins hyperventilating and crying, and actually makes me pull over so she can get off the bus and throw up. We are about 15 minutes from the school, and I'm literally having a panic attack. So, I call the principal and ask what should I do. Do we have an EpiPen on hand at the school, ECT? She seems confused and puts a bee's grandmother on, who tells me she wasn't aware her granddaughter, who is claiming she can barely breathe, had any allergies. When we got back to the school I was about ready to faint and the principal brings out her registration paperwork to show me, no listed allergies. She isn't allergic to anything, it was all an act. The hyperventilating, the crying, even the throwing up, was all for attention. First grader threatened to cut my head off with a pair of scissors because I told her she couldn't put a mutilated dead body on her banner. So I'm not entirely sure if this is sociopath or psychopath, but I had a child that was creepily into my pregnancy for the first 7 months. He wanted to name her, talk to my belly, etc. Then one day it clicked that I would leave, and he got really close to me and whispered, "When you come out, I'm going to kill you with a hammer. I hate you." I was shocked, so I took him with me to the office. The LSSP asked why he said that. He replied that it will take her away. I wanted to die, so she stays here. He was on a lot of medication for his incredibly violent tendencies. He had tried to kill his sister before by pushing her in front of a bus. His mother kept him locked in his room at night because she had found him standing over her with a knife. Had a 6-year-old the size of a 9-year-old pin a 4-year-old to a wall and at least looked like he was trying to feel her up. I walked up behind him and shouted, "What the hell do you think you are doing?" And he immediately backed off and started stuttering trying to explain himself. He would say some fucked up shit too. One time, he walked up to me, a 6-foot tall, bearded man, and said, basically, "Hey mama, let me suck on them tits." Hated that kid. If you told him to do anything, he would intentionally do something to go against what he was told. His parents spoiled him rotten and let him do whatever he wanted. He got away with anything because a former teacher had inadvertently injured him, and his family, who are filthy rich, threatened to sue the dog out of the school. He basically had immunity from discipline at school and parents that let him do whatever he wanted. He hated me because I wouldn't put up with his shit. I never hurt him, but I would put him in a halt so that he couldn't move fairly often because he would constantly sucker punch other, smaller kids for just about any reason at all. Even if he just wanted the toy they were holding. Kid was a little sociopath with parents that were rich enough that they enabled the behavior. His sister annoyed him, so he killed her kitten in front of her. Complete and utter lack of remorse. Just didn't see animals as any different from toys. Violence towards animals during childhood is very common in serial killers. I worked with a student who would fit this description. The stories of the things he did are extensive. One example is that he got up from his seat to throw something away. On his way back, he walked up behind a student who was distracted working on his assignment. Out of the blue, he pushed the working student's head forward and into the desk. He gave him a bloody nose. There had been no previous altercation or source of friction between the two. His parents were divorced, and his mother was too afraid of him to have him during the days she had custody. His father would move him frequently from school to school once his behavior got so bad that the school started the process to get him into psychiatric care. I taught a 15-year-old boy who was really creepy. He submitted a creative writing story that was rape fiction in which he graphically described how a white blonde woman was being raped to corrupt the purity she feigns, which was quite scary as a white blonde woman to read. When confronted by a vice principal, he started ranting about how he hated all the girls in the class because they were all b****s, even though none listed had ever had an interaction with him, positive or negative. He then wrote me an apology letter where heaps of the lines were aggressively crossed out with, drawn next to them. At last confrontation by a vice principal, he got really aggressive, walked out and punched the school fence several times. Unfortunately he wasn't expelled. I had a student while I was doing my student teaching, 8th grade. He was constantly in trouble, but during the times he was in class, he just stared off with the most vacant look in his eyes. It truly scared me. It was downright creepy. One day he was up at the whiteboard writing some stuff. I think it was correcting sentences with a bunch of other kids who were doing the same thing. I wasn't watching the kids at the board, and all of a sudden I hear this blood-curdling scream and look over. He had brought a hypodermic needle and had stabbed the girl next to him in the leg. He had been holding it in his hand the entire time, just waiting for the opportunity to stick someone. It was, of course, terrible, but the girl turned out okay. The worst part, besides that, was how he laughed when security came to get him. I'm shuddering now just thinking about it. Not a teacher, but at my kid's daycare there was a bona fide sociopath in the making. This kid would inflict harm on others with a genuine smile on his face, like he was playing, but he was secretly enjoying it. Hitting, biting, punching, kicking, breaking toys, destroying artwork, but very secretive and carefully planned when teachers or parents weren't looking. He was really intelligent and well spoken for his age as well. Yeah, he was asked to leave after a few years and pretty much every parent there was relieved. I taught a 4-year-old boy who actually scared me because I fear what his future will be. I can see him ended up doing some awful things to people. He would try and kiss and hug girls, and when they didn't want to, he'd hold them tightly and try to anyway, even if they loudly protested. I explained that there is no kissing in school, and if someone doesn't want to hug, they absolutely do not have to. I also said that some people don't like hugging. He said, well, I want her to, so she will. He just couldn't understand boundaries of any kind. This is just one tiny example of the things he did. I did refer him as I believe he has autism and he's undergoing assessment now and awaiting a diagnosis, but I worry there's something else there with him. He would also watch other children to see how he should act. For example, a child might be sad and another child comforts them. He would copy this behavior, but totally exaggerate it, like completely over the top, and use it as an excuse to touch others, mainly girls. He never showed any emotion other than anger and jealousy. He had a very scary look in his eyes and I've never met another child like him. Anthony was 6. He had violent tendencies towards animals and other children, severe headaches and a teddy bear containing the ashes of his dead sister. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Let us know your thoughts on this topic. See you soon.